All right. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Kelsey Knowles. I'm located in South Florida, but I'm the Director of State Engagement for a few states right now, North Carolina and Wisconsin, which I'm very excited about. A little background about me. I'm a person in long-term recovery. Really excited to have just celebrated 10 years on December 10th. Big milestone for me. I've been in the field almost as long. I've done a lot of work in the peer space, both in direct service and in supervision and advisory capacities. I'm also a trained clinician. I worked for a time as a therapist in a detox setting. I also have quite a bit of experience in managed care. So I've worked in a lot of settings, but always in the substance use space, and was really excited to join the Atlas team and looking forward to telling you all a little bit more about Shatterproof and Atlas. So just as kind of a place to start, I'd love to hear if anyone on the call has heard of either Shatterproof or Atlas before. And if you could just share what you're hoping to get out of today's presentation so I can make sure that everyone walks away with what they were hoping for. Feel free to just come off mute or put it in the chat if you prefer. Okay, I'm seeing John in the chat. Oh, just an introduction. Okay, so I'm going to take the quiet to mean that we haven't heard of Atlas or Shatterproof before, which is totally fine. That is what I'm here for. And any specific takeaways that y'all are looking for other than just getting an idea of what this Atlas rollout is going to look like and what it means for Wisconsin? If there's anything specific, please don't hesitate to let me know.
Well, this is Megan from Marshfield Clinic, and my role primarily has been prevention and recovery, but I'm dabbling into supporting our treatment services now. And I'm curious on what people use currently to locate providers and if that resource is up to date. So if anyone wants to throw that in the chat, that'd be helpful. And then just interested in hearing more about how this could enhance their services in Wisconsin.
Yeah, thank you so much. I can definitely speak for the national resource. The SAMHSA treatment locator is something that I commonly hear that folks are using to identify treatment centers. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself because I'll kind of dig into that a little bit later. But that is a current existing resource. And if anyone knows of anything specific to Wisconsin, feel free to drop it in the chat. I have come across a Wisconsin treatment search tool, but I'm far from an expert on it. So if anyone wants to speak to that, feel free. All right. Okay, well, Shatterproof has received a grant from DHS in Wisconsin, and we'll be working with providers and lots of other community organizations and stakeholders in the state to roll out Atlas. Atlas is a free treatment locator tool. I'm going to get into a lot more details during this presentation, but that is the very, very high level overview. So this is sort of what we're looking at as the agenda for this call. I'm going to give you an overview of Atlas as a tool, of the survey. I'm going to talk a lot about why that survey is important and how y'all who work at provider agencies can help provide data through that survey. These other points are more detailed as far as survey submission, which I'll get into more. We'll take a little look at some of the questions that are asked in that survey. And I'll touch on our CQI learning series, which is another offering that Atlas provides. So let's jump in without further ado. I mentioned the SAMHSA treatment locator. There are a number of treatment locators in existence. Like I said, I'm not an expert on every single one, but I am an expert on Atlas. And there are many reasons that Atlas is unique and I think very well positioned to be especially helpful to folks who are looking to identify addiction treatment. So for one, it includes a consumer-friendly needs assessment. We partnered with ASAM in developing this assessment. It's short. It's currently 13 questions, going down to 10 as part of our website redesign that's launching in the spring. And we worked really hard to make the language very accessible. It's very plain language. Anyone who's ever looked at an ASAM assessment knows that it's highly clinical in nature and difficult to understand. And our assessment is nothing like that. Any person could answer those questions and come away with a really solid recommendation for a level of care. Atlas contains indicators of treatment quality. So we based our quality points on a 2016 Surgeon General's report and worked with a team of national experts to really drill down the information in that report into salient quality indicators. And so when we talk about Atlas being data-driven, it's really in reference to those points of quality. Atlas is not funded by providers or pay to play. So if any of y'all have tried to Google treatment facilities in the past, you'll know that generally the first 5 results will be ads that are sponsored, and nothing like that is happening on Atlas. It's completely data driven. If you type in the name of a facility, that exact facility is going to come up. It's a comprehensive list of facilities. So we receive our list of facilities based on all of the treatment facilities licensed for substance use treatment in the state. So we like it to be as complete as possible. We do a lot of internal work cleaning that list and making sure it's up to date. We update that regularly. If licenses are suspended, we update that in real time. And once a year, we ask for facilities to submit a survey to us to give us all that really rich, detailed information about services offered, insurances accepted, etc. I'll get into that a little bit more later, but that's sort of where our data comes from. It contains educational content for users. Any facilities who submit data to us get access to a professional portal. What they can see in that portal is essentially how their services line up on those indicators of quality and how they compare to similar facilities in the area. And once again, Atlas is free and we are a not-for-profit. So I've said a lot of information there. So I'll pause and see if there are any questions so far. Okay. These are those principles of care that I mentioned that came out of that 2016 Surgeon General's report. We reference all the data we get back to points 2 through 8 because we find that number 1 generally occurs before an individual has interaction with a substance use treatment setting. So when I talk more about quality data, this is what that is in reference to. I mentioned that our Atlas is not funded by providers and it's not pay to play. These are some of the organizations that we've partnered with for funding and otherwise. This group in particular signed on to those national principles of care. In other words, saying that they supported and agreed with those principles of care. A lot of these folks are also our funders. In measure development, for the sake of time, I won't dig too deep into that. Suffice to say, we don't pretend that Shatterproof is an island. We really want to collaborate with industry and field experts nationally to make sure that we're implementing best practices. So I'll dig into our Atlas survey. There's going to be a lot of communication to Wisconsin providers in the coming months about our open enrollment period, which is going to start January 18th. So as I mentioned before, we've received a list of all facilities licensed to provide substance use treatment in the state. That is the list that we are basing our outreach on. And from there, we're going to ask all of those facilities to complete our survey during the open enrollment period that's going to go through April. It gathers information on clinical processes. It needs to be completed at the facility level because it does ask things like staffing patterns, hours of operation, specific credentialing of staff members, etc. All of that, as I said, links back to those national principles of care. And this was developed both with provider and consumer input. Any questions? Just want to be mindful if there are questions along the way. And feel free at any time to use that raise hand feature. Okay. So as I mentioned, our Atlas survey is going to open for the state of Wisconsin on January 18th. On that date, you or a member of your team will receive a link to your unique Atlas survey. And I'll emphasize again, each of those links is unique. So when you do receive that, make sure to just use the link that was sent to you, not one that was shared, because it could potentially be for a different facility. And at that time, you can start providing data. The survey will save as you go. So no worries. We know how busy it is to work in a treatment facility. If you have to stop and start, it's not a problem. As soon as you hit that next page button on the survey, all of that prior data will save. So again, the survey asks about facility staffing, services, medications offered, some policy and procedure questions. We recommend that someone who's pretty familiar with services complete the survey. Often this is someone in a quality or compliance role. It might also be a clinical director, but we find that oftentimes clinical directors are super busy with the day-to-day operations, and sometimes someone in more of a quality or compliance type department is better positioned to provide that information. It's very similar information that gets asked for in things like JCAHO and CARF accreditation. So often folks in those roles are already familiar with how to answer these questions. The survey can take between half an hour, 2 to 2.5 hours, I think is on the very long end to complete. And it really just depends on how prepared that person is to take the survey. One of the things that I'll share as a follow-up to this call is our provider preparedness toolkit, which is a really nice, concise checklist of things that you would either need to gather or kind of just know in order to answer the questions in the survey to make sure it goes by as quickly as possible. And the survey does require an attestation from the CEO or someone in a similar C-level position, just to attest that all that data provided was correct. Any questions? Okay. So this is sort of the flow of our open enrollment period. For our survey, we will provide a link of like a PDF of the survey, but I almost kind of recommend not getting overwhelmed by what you see there, because the survey has skip logic embedded. When you open like a full PDF of the survey, it's exceedingly long, but no one answers all of those questions. If you're familiar at all with survey logic, you know that you can build in that if you answer a question one way, further questions will populate. If you answer it another way, you kind of skip on to questions. So we will send a full copy of that survey, but I encourage you not to be overwhelmed by that and perhaps to just focus more on that checklist that I mentioned before. To make sure that that survey data is correct, we ask that some supporting data is uploaded just to make sure that jives with the answers to the questions. And as I mentioned, we have that leadership attestation. Once that survey is submitted, we will analyze that internally, look for any potential errors, make sure that what was submitted seems like valid data. We do have a period where we'll follow up with the facility. The facility can once again review that data was submitted. At that point, if they chose, they could decide, you know what, I actually don't want to have my data displayed on the site, and we could pull it back. I don't believe that's ever happened before, but there is an opportunity to do that. We will randomly audit facility submissions, and all of this is just an effort to ensure that the data displayed on Atlas is accurate. And finally, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You can continue.
No, please jump in.
Okay, thanks, Kelsey. So question for you, this might be an elementary question, but so the survey is going to those treatment facilities that have like a DHS 75 accreditation, or are they going to all, or is this going to all treatment providers, whether or not they identify as a treatment center?
Great question. So the survey is going to go to anyone who is licensed in the state of Wisconsin to provide substance use treatment. So
Okay,
that
thank
list
you.
is about 400 providers long.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It's not tied to any one funding source. If that was kind of the crux of your question, it should be all providers of substance use treatment in the state.
That's great. Yeah, I didn't want it to get siloed into like specific accreditations and stuff. So that's great to hear.
Totally. No, we want it to be as comprehensive as possible. All right. So some of the benefits of participating in Atlas, obviously spreading the word about your treatment services. Atlas has some really special functionality in terms of filtering. You can get very, very specific. Say I'm working with someone who specifically is looking for services, maybe with an older population because they're older and don't want to be in a facility with primarily 20-year-olds, and maybe they have this specific insurance type, et cetera. Languages spoken, preference for specific medications used in treatment. Say they specifically are looking for methadone treatment. All of those things can be filtered down. So if you're a facility that serves special groups, or maybe you offer specific accessibility to folks, languages spoken, et cetera, those are all things that folks can filter for and more readily find your services. Our number one mission with Atlas is to increase access and transparency in treatment services. So again, we are a nonprofit and that's really our mission. So I always like to note that by providing this data to Atlas, not only is it sort of free advertising and a way to get more referrals, but it really does forward that mission of helping the folks who need these services to find them. Which, I'm sure most of us get into this field out of a desire to help folks out there who are struggling. Any questions? I'll pause again. All right. So we do have some options for larger organizations. For example, if you're an organization that has 10 facility sites, 10 surveys is a lot starting from scratch, and we really want to make this as easy a process as possible. So there's sort of two options if you're with an organization that has multiple sites. If you have lots and lots of sites, we're talking over 5 sites. We have some providers that have 25 sites in a state. We can do what's called a parent survey. That would be one survey that someone fills out with information that would apply to most of those facilities. And we can take that data and populate it into all of those individual site surveys so that it'll only take about 10-15 minutes to knock out each of those site surveys and really just filling in things like staffing and hours of operation, stuff like that. The other option, if you have maybe 2 or 3 sites, something like that, if you complete one survey, same idea, we can take that data, transfer it into the other facility site, and then you can just kind of make updates from there. We really are cognizant that folks who work in this field are very, very busy. We want to make this as easy as possible. I am your point person. I am ready, willing, and able to help however I can by phone, Zoom, or email. We really do want to make this easy on everyone, and we don't want anyone to be in a position where they're having to fill out more than one survey from scratch. So just something to keep in the back of your head if you are someone who might be responsible for providing data for more than one location. We're totally here to help with that, and we do not want you to do double work. We have some options to make that easier for you. So I'll just pause, see if there's any questions about that. All right. I'm going to click through some of these other slides because I would rather focus here. So this is just a snapshot of the opening questions of the treatment facility survey. These are sort of screen out questions. So you'll see name, address, is the facility open, right? Does the facility offer in-person treatment at a physical location? Again, being mindful of people's time, this is our eligibility criteria. So if your facility is not open, we don't want you to spend an hour answering questions just to find out you can't be listed on Atlas, because the intention is to list open in-person treatment facilities for folks who are using Atlas to search for treatment. This is the checklist that I mentioned earlier. This is about half of it, and I'm going to send it out following this call, just so you can get an idea of sort of what information is needed to complete the survey. Obviously, contact information. Someone will need to provide like a general facility overview. That's an open text box. The payment sources accepted, so whether it's insurance plans, cash pay, sliding scale, etc. The levels of care, the substances that a facility provides treatment for, which sort of age groups and gender groups, etc. are served, information on fast access to treatment, whether telehealth is offered. And I won't go all of these line by line, but you can see that this is information that generally a clinical director or a person in like a quality type role would probably know off the top of their head, and wouldn't have to scrape together too much information or too many staff members to get the information. I'll pause again. Any other questions so far? Okay.
Cadence by which the facility.
Oh, I hear someone talking, but I'm not sure if that's for me. Okay. So just some tips for getting the survey done. It's really helpful to have like one point person for this. It's possible they may have to touch base with other staff members to get some questions answered, but it's generally, in our experience, best to have one point person for it. Feel free to circulate the reference copy that will be coming to you of the survey if that would be helpful. We recommend folks plan time on their calendar to complete it. That they schedule time with that leadership for that attestation piece. And that's super simple. It's literally just the person in that role verifying that information is correct and doing a sign off on it, and then just reviewing the data before submitting. And I will reiterate here that there is a preview period to review the data again later on, but no changes could be made after it is submitted. And that's my email address on the screen. As I said, I am ready, willing, and able to help with anything that I can. Just getting back into the benefits of participation, you have the provider portals that allows facilities to kind of compare where they're at on all those quality metrics compared to facilities in the area that offer similar services. I mentioned increasing transparency and access as being our kind of guiding principle. And it's a little bit of free marketing for the facility. I'll mention our CQI learning series. So this is just another little added bonus. Atlas puts on a CQI learning series where we invite speakers to present on various topics. We've had different subject matter experts, and it's just a nice learning opportunity. And what I would love to do, if y'all agree that it might be helpful, is show you the Atlas website so you can kind of get a feel for the platform. Does that sound like that would be something that would be helpful to kind of bring it all together? That's the kind of learner that I am. So I see one thumbs up. Any other thumbs ups? Okay.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, excellent. If you're like me, I can hear lots of information all day, but I don't really process it unless I can kind of sink my teeth into something. So I like to just go ahead and show the site. And if you would like, Catherine, if you could just throw the website into the chat bar, feel free to plug this in on your browser and just take a look that way as well. There are no barriers to accessing Atlas for users. We love anyone to use it, right? Whether that's providers, community orgs, or just people in the community. You don't have to pay to use it. There's no login. So this is what you see when you plug in treatmentatlas.org. You'll see here that there's an option to take the assessment. That's what I mentioned that we work together with ASAM to create, and we'll suggest a level of care. Alternatively, if you're someone who maybe is more familiar with the treatment system, maybe you know the exact facility that you want to go to, or you know the name of like a parent org, want to see if they have a location near you, you can type in the facility name and you can jump straight to searching down here. But just for the sake of kind of showing you, I'll go ahead and click into the assessment. It says it takes around 10 minutes. It's not going to take us quite that long. But you'll notice we worked really hard to put this into plain language. We're acknowledging right away that often someone else will be taking this assessment for a loved one. Many times the person who's struggling is not in a position to search for treatment on their own. So we've been very mindful of that in the creation of Atlas as a whole, as well as the assessment. I'm just going to click through some of these questions so you can see what they look like. It asks what substances we're having problems with. We tried to use both street names and sort of categories, just keeping in mind that people know substances by different names in different areas. For our sake, I'll go ahead and select fentanyl. We all know what a challenge that is. Then we get into some level of care placement questions, but you'll see again that effort at putting converting that clinical language into plain language that anyone can understand. So are you able to stop using the substance, or do you need to use every day? I'm going to go ahead and say I can stop, but I might use again in a week or so. We'll keep moving forward. This is getting into sort of withdrawal symptoms. So imagine if you stopped using, would you feel sick? Do you think you might need help or detoxification? And we get into some nice descriptions of withdrawal. I'll go ahead and select this one for argument's sake. Do you have any medical or physical health problems right now? So what this is going to filter out is any facilities that either do or don't offer physical health care on site. That's one of the points of data that we collect through the survey. I'm going to go ahead and say I have minimal health issues and move forward. This is a very similar question, but it gets into mental health challenges. So similarly, we're now going to filter for sites that either do or don't have mental health care available on site. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm slightly bothered, but I'm able to take care of things. I'll also point out we have this really nice progress bar, which I think is helpful for people to know how far along they are. We have a question about suicidality. I'm going to go ahead and say no, but just note that if I said yes, it would populate resources for suicide prevention. Am I concerned about seeking treatment? So we're kind of getting into barriers here. Do you have any legal requirements? So what this is going to sort through is it's going to, if I answer yes, only find me facilities that have indicated that they work with justice involved.
Hi, Debbie. This is Pat Eisenberg at Washington County. How you doing?
Oh, Pat, I'm so sorry. I forgot.
I'm going to go ahead and mute Pat. I don't think you meant to talk to us there. Okay. And these are just kind of about, do you have a place to live? Do you have a daily routine? Do you have reliable transportation? Any issues with mobility? And we are almost done here. So that's it for the assessment. You can see it's suggesting intensive outpatient as a level of care. It's also suggesting a couple ancillary services here, medication for opioid use disorder. If I don't know what that means, I can click this little I and it will give me a description of what that means. Same thing with intensive outpatient. It's letting me know that it's at least 9 hours per week for adults, 6 for adolescents. From here, I could save my results if I'm not ready to start looking at facilities yet, or I could go ahead and click that I want to find treatment now. Any questions before I dig into the results? Okay, so let's say I want to find treatment now. I'm going to go ahead and put in my zip code and a radius that I'm willing to travel to get treatment and hit submit. So here we go. This is our search results page. This is the same page we would have been directed to if I had chosen not to take the assessment and just jumped straight into searching for facilities. So you'll see that under applied filters, it has carried through those recommendations from the assessment. So it's currently filtering only for facilities that provide intensive outpatient level of care, medication for opioid use disorder, and have mental health care on site. You'll also see this filter for quality data provided. What that means is it's only showing me facilities that have filled out that survey and provided that richness of detail to be able to tell us this information. So again, I'll pause, but a reminder to please interrupt me if you have any questions. Okay. From here, say, hey, that assessment recommended mental health care on site, but that's not actually important to me. Those filters aren't set in stone. I could just get rid of them. I can come over to this sidebar where we have additional filters and say, the assessment didn't address this, but I'm actually interested not in any medication for OUD, but specifically in Suboxone. I can add that filter and it has refiltered my list. Now you'll see there's only 2 results because that's pretty specific. But I'll also note there are selections for age specific, which are filtered out right now because I have all those other filters on: languages spoken, special groups served, and LGBTQ welcoming. I'll go ahead and show you what a facility page looks like. So when you click in, you're going to see contact information, the website. You're going to see all the payment options that they accept, the insurance that they accept, accreditation, the substances they focus on, the groups they serve, languages spoken, etc. And when we scroll down, we can see how the data that they provided lines up against those quality metrics that we talked about earlier. And if there's a green check mark here, it means that what they told us was in alignment with these quality metrics. We can get more information about any of these by clicking the See More. I can just remind everyone to mute if you're not talking. That's helpful. Thank you. One that I find the most helpful to click into is specifics on medications for both opioid and alcohol use disorder. I've worked with a lot of folks that have a specific preference for a medication that they want to use as part of their recovery pathway, and you're able to see a breakdown of the medications that are offered or not offered at the facility. So I'll pause again and see if we have any questions. All right, we're a quiet bunch today. I hope everyone's quiet because they're eating a very delicious lunch right now. Another great one to click into are these additional services to support recovery. As a current peer, former peer support worker, I always love to see that facilities offer peer recovery support. You can also see, if they offer spiritual support, legal aid, etc. Great information to know. Mental health care on site, primary health care on site. Again, you'll see throughout Atlas, we have these little information buttons that you can click on to get additional explanation about what we mean by something. And that is what a completed facility page looks like. For facilities that don't complete that survey and submit data to us, it would still have their contact information up here because that's information that we get along with that licensing list, but everything else would say no data. So it wouldn't have anything below this teal line on the screen, would just say no data because that's not been provided to us. I'll also mention this compare feature. So if I wanted to compare some facilities side by side, I could go ahead and click add to compare. Catherine can correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say you can compare up to 3 facilities side by side. Say I was looking for treatment for a loved one, I could maybe put 3 options on one page, print that out and bring that to them to have a discussion about what's going to work best for them.
Kelsey, I think you also had a question in the chat. I don't know if you.
Oh, thank
Okay,
you.
yeah.
Yeah. Let me see.
Sarah's just asking about the filter for the quality data, if that's automatically added when you're searching for facilities.
Yeah, great question, Sarah. So the answer is yes. This quality data provided filter is automatically applied because, as I said, without it, you don't get that richness of data. You can, however, remove it. And I will show you here. So if you can identify facilities that have not provided quality data because it shows up here in orange. And as I mentioned, it will still have, some basic contact information, but all of this other data will say not available. Does that answer your question, Sarah? Awesome. Yes, thank you. Yeah, great question. What else? I know I've given you so much information, so maybe everyone is just processing, but so happy to field other questions. Well, I'll ask a question of you all then. Does this sound similar to anything that you've used in the past in Wisconsin? Does this sound like something that will be helpful for folks looking for treatment in your state? What are your thoughts?
I definitely think this will be a great resource, and hopefully it'll provide kind of a bridge for access to care too. So often we hear that patients don't know where to go or who provides these services. So I think this will be a really great resource.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I can speak from my own experience that looking for treatment can be super overwhelming, which reminds me that everything on Atlas is completely anonymous. So there's not that fear of I know if it was me, if I had to pick up the phone and talk to someone to kind of get treatment options, I would have been a lot more hesitant to do that than to just kind of anonymously get on a site and search. What other thoughts?
Sarah has a question in the chat. Kelsey asking about when this will be available for Wisconsin residents to use.
Oh, great question. So our data collection period, that open enrollment survey period, is going to run from mid-January to mid-April. It takes us a couple months to validate that data, give providers an opportunity to review that data, and we expect to launch before the end of June. So before the end of June, Atlas will be live and searchable for Wisconsin residents. And while it's not live in your state right now, I would totally encourage you to go on treatmentatlas.org and see what it looks like in one of our other states. We're currently live in 11 states. We're launching some more next year, which we haven't announced yet. And our goal is to eventually be in all 50 states one day. But just to get an idea of the functionality, I'd encourage you to click around. Any questions specific to the survey? Like anyone wondering if that's going to be within their purview? All right. Well, I won't hold us if it sounds like there aren't any other questions at this time. But I will send an email follow-up with that provider preparedness checklist, just to give everyone an idea of how to best prepare. So getting through that survey is as quick as possible. And I'll also send out a recording of this call. And please, if you think of any questions later on, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I really thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.